Yeah.
I think that's the thing with the BME community, not really picked up. They just assume English is your second language, you're a bit slower at things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
very important.
When did your dyslexia get picked up?
It never did. While I was doing my degree in counselling, the tutors were trying to push me off the course, saying that I wasn't good enough. At that point, I realised that something was wrong, because I got an A in the presentation, I got a D in one assessment, but across the board I was getting B's and C's. My grades would drop, and then there was a question of, are you cheating? And I said, no, there's not the cheating, but it was the stress caused by the tutors that made me get a lower grade. So,
Yeah. Was it also the fact that the exams weren't suitable for the way that you express yourself?
Yes, possibly. The essays, it was essays that I were writing, and they said they weren't flowing, and there was confusion within the work. So, especially training as a counsellor, and they started talking about my behaviour, my attitude to everything. I said, no, there's nothing wrong with me. It's purely because there's something else going on. So I went away and did the dyslexic test, and realised that I was dyslexic.
So you're a counsellor, you're a psychotherapist. Do you specialise in any particular area of psychotherapy?
Yeah. So I specialise in trauma. That's my speciality. I work with refugees, I work with women of domestic violence, and just generally depression, anxiety, people, and dyslexic clients. I have a lot of clients come to me and dyslexia has never been picked up. So you can imagine the level of self-esteem, the low self-esteem that they have. Yeah.
And do you find that there are differences between what you might call the white community and the BAME community in terms of...
There is, but even then, even within the white community, is never because it will be blamed on the working class. It would be blamed on something else. So, they never really pick up that it might be the brain's wired in a different way. So, part of my training, I worked in Cirencester. So as you imagine, it's a very white, middle-class area. They'd never seen a Muslim person before. So I did learn a lot about the culture, how they worked and so on.
Yeah, I suppose for a lot of people in cultures like that, it might be just difficult to accept any form of diversity.
And for especially places like Cirencester, it got masked by the class because, just because you're middle class or, a higher class, it's not something that we talk about. Let's just brush it under the carpet. And if you're working class, it's just, it's because you're dumb, It's the way the families are. And within the BME, we don't even talk about that. You're either intelligent or you're not. We just don't want to talk about that. There's a huge pressure as teenagers growing up. So a lot of Asian families want their children to be doctors or engineers or, do really well at university, because that's that huge peer pressure from the adults. That, where is your child? Or is your child in grammar school? Why isn't he in grammar school? Why has he not got A-levels? How many A stars has your child got? It's not about, it's a lot to do with grades and so on. So the client that I've just left, she has been suffering from anxiety, depression, body image, because she's always felt that she was ugly. But I think that was just a projection to take it away from how her brain was wired in a different way. And just told, you're making it up. There's no such thing as dyslexia. It doesn't happen to Asian people. It doesn't happen to the BME community. So there is a stigma there.
And why would it not happen to the BME Asian community? Is it a cultural thing, or is it sort of almost a preconception based on the language difference? So maybe the parents came from India.
Yeah, maybe, possibly. But then you have to remember a lot of the parents are probably third generation. So the kids are, like myself, I was born here. Yeah. I've got teenage children myself. Yeah. So, but parents before that, their grandparents wouldn't have actually studied. So both parents were illiterate. My mother was illiterate. She didn't speak English. She didn't read English. She didn't read her own language. My father was a little bit more educated. So definitely come from a working class family.
So I'm actually really interested that somehow, you say you're third generation, maybe your kids are going to be fourth generation, and yet somehow these cultural norms get passed down.
Initially, it would have been extended families, and slowly changing. So sociologically, economically, things have been changing over time.
Yeah. Does it change with wealth as well?
Absolutely. My generation of parents wouldn't have been educated. They want the best for their children, so they expect them to go away and become doctors or engineers or, lawyers. But also for the males than females, but it's changing. Yeah. So when I was growing up, it came to GCSE, after GCSE, it was very much that's it, you're not going to go to further education. But although I was dyslexic, I knew I wasn't the brightest student. I failed my GCSEs, failed my A-levels, failed my first degree, but I still had that in me that I wanted to study, I wanted to make a difference. And, and now I'm here doing my master's in Bristol, so...
You failed your GCSEs, you failed your A-level, you failed your first degree. And I'm going to make a slight cultural generalisation as well. You're a woman as well. And so, if you like, the cards seem to be stacked against you.
But I still knew that there was something in me that I was worth, I needed to pursue myself for myself, if that makes any sense. I knew that I deserved better. I needed a chance to prove myself. And the biggest thing for me was the female role models that were out there.
Right.
And knowing if they could do it, I could do it also. So,
you say role models. These role models, is it important that these role models are female? Is it important that they're Asian? Is it important does it matter who the role models are, in other words?
I think, especially as a female, they would matter as well. If clients need that, just that uplifting, and they're feeling they're not good enough. So you bring in that, whatever they work, using their frame of reference.
Maybe you don't know, maybe you haven't noticed this, or maybe it's impossible to notice this, but yeah. I've spoken to a few Muslim people who often say, or they give me the impression that in a Muslim community, there's more sort of communitarianism than there is in what you might call an American or an Anglo-Saxon Protestant British community. Do you find that as the generations go down, that they lose that communitarianism and become more British in that respect?
Yeah, definitely there is. But there's also, you're still holding on to that identity. Often when people ask you to describe who you are, and I say British, they say, well, what do you mean British? I said British Pakistani. And then you have to explain, so were you born here? Where are you from? That classic.
So you constantly almost have to justify your identity.
Absolutely. So when I say Newcastle, people do get shocked and they say, well, you don't have the accent. On the accent. Well, I do.
Is there any form of sort of cultural stigma or shame involved with dyslexia from, let's say, the Pakistani community or something? Or is there no difference between maybe a Pakistani community? I mean, okay, I don't like that kind of language, but you know what I mean. So a community with a Pakistani background and a community with a white background.
I think there is. I probably need to do a lot more research and allow people to come forward to see what's going on. But I definitely think there would be. Similarly, if they said that their child had autism, it's a very similar sort of, stigma. People don't want to admit that their child either has autism or is on the ADHD spectrum. It's all to do with it being neurodiverse and being different.